5-minute call, Jenny Salisa.
Mr. Speaker, it is with pleasure that I stand to take a short call on this bill, the Drug and Alcohol Testing, Community-Based Offenders and Bailees Legislation Bill 2014. This is an important piece of legislation and one that Labor supports to the next stage. We know that the misuse of drug and alcohol is a major driver of crime and criminal activity. Mr. Speaker, I would like to share a story that is relevant to this bill, and it highlights why it is important to have a bill like this. A lady who works in crime prevention was working with an offender who had a very long history of offending. His record indicated that most of his offending involved drugs or alcohol. He had already clocked up a very long history of criminal activity. This young man was on parole, and one night he and two friends decided to go driving. He had never been tested while he was on parole for drugs or alcohol, and in the course of this night as they were driving, he unfortunately went in past the middle lane and went head on to another vehicle that was coming on the other side. The young man who was on parole was the driver, and he was heavily under the influence of alcohol. The result of this accident, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately resulted in his best friend, who was a passenger, unfortunately passing away, and his other friend, who was also in the car, is now confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. When costs of incidents like this, Mr. Speaker, in human terms, in misery, in lives lost, in health and disability support services, and dollars are considered, the potential benefits of the preventative measures that a bill like this proposes, to me, seems to be well worth our serious consideration in this House. Research from the United States indicates that where high-risk drink drivers are aware that the chances of their detection are very, very high, recidivism can reduce by as much as 36%. The Alcohol and Drug Testing of Community-Based Offenders and Bailees Legislation Bill 2014 will enable the Department of Correction and the New Zealand Police to require community-based offenders and Bailees, the individuals who are subject to the conditions prohibiting the use of drugs or alcohol, to undergo drug and alcohol testing in order to ensure that they are complying with the conditions of abstinence in their sentencing. Around 5,000 offenders each year are on community sentences order, and approximately 15,000 Bailees have an abstinence condition imposed. However, Mr. Speaker, it is only in very, very rare cases that abstinence conditions actually require testing. Testing for the presence of alcohol and other drugs to improve compliance with abstinence conditions is already widely used overseas, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, as well as in Australia, and the evidence shows that it actually works. In Australia, where they've been testing offenders for quite some time, they've concluded that as a result of their experience, targeted testing, especially of those at highest risk of reoffending, is the most effective way of improving public safety from these offenders. Here in Aotearoa, Mr. Speaker, we have a group of offenders and Bailees whose offending is at times directly related to their consumption of alcohol or taking drugs. The issue that this bill provides for in order of solving, Mr. Speaker, is that the current legislation does not provide clear authority that allows offenders or Bailees to be tested in order to find out whether or not they are continuing to abstain from alcohol or drugs. Mr. Speaker, Labor would like the committee to explore the threshold for reasonableness regarding the frequency of testing and in the context of the privacy and dignity afforded to those subjected to testing. We would also like to hear evidence about the use of alcohol monitoring technology and of its effectiveness. Mr. Speaker, we believe that the imposition and enforcement of a drug or alcohol condition plays an important role in preventing reoffending and ensuring that our public are kept safe. We support this bill. Thank you.